Welcome back to New Day. Brand new video this morning of that teenager who stowed away in the wheel well of a Boeing 767 for a 5-hour flight and survived. Some people questioned it, but now it just seems it's just too real to be fake. Security footage we have now shows the 15-year-old climbing down from the plane, walking around seemingly in a daze on the tarmac. Let's walk through it with retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. You don't have to be an Air Force Colonel to get this video, but just understanding what it takes to survive this. Let's just take a look at the video, okay? So here we go. Got a little bubble on it for you, so it makes more sense. Seems to be coming out of that right rear side of the plane, right, Cedric?
That's exactly right, Chris. And what you see right here is he's clearly walking around very disoriented. And this is consistent with what happens when somebody has oxygen deprivation. So if you have oxygen deprivation, your faculties aren't going to be all there. You're going to be walking around, you're going to be unbalanced, you're going to be thinking about, well, almost nothing. You're going to try to get your bearings, and you're going to try to figure out exactly where you're at. And you can see that's what he's doing right now.
So he's staggering around. He doesn't know where he is, and why would he? Now, let me ask you something. It seems like he was coming from the right rear of the aircraft. The wheel well in the back, is it any more sustainable? Is it any better temperature-wise? Is there any variable that made it more advantageous for him to be there than, let's say, in the front?
Normally, the only thing that's going to keep him in a higher temperature is the fact that he's getting possibly some warmth from the engines.
Right.
He's pretty close to the engines. You see right here, he has, the engines are right at this point on the wings, and the wheel well is not too far from there. So he's probably in that balanced area between too little temperature and too much temperature. So that makes it almost not quite just right. Certainly don't try this at home, but it is one of those things where in this particular case, he was able to survive because he had just the right atmospheric conditions in order to do that. But he definitely did this, in my view.
He got lucky. There's no question about that. But it just, you're not supposed to survive this, and that's why any variable that makes it more plausible. Look, and clearly, if you do this, you will die in all likelihood unless you get incredibly lucky, like this kid did. Later on, we see him, and he interfaces, we don't have it on this clip of the video, but he interfaces with a worker there who's got a vest on.
Right.
Can you imagine being that worker and this guy says, I just hopped out of the plane? They couldn't have believed it. Huh?
Oh, absolutely unbelievable situation, because when you're in an airport situation, you have a certain routine. You're going to be, handling cargo. You're going to be making sure the plane's taxied to the right place. This is totally out of the ordinary, and had he not approached that worker, chances are he could have potentially walked off the tarmac into some other area in the airport, and that could have created a whole other sort of problems.
Now, we know he's with child welfare now. They're trying to figure out what's going on with him. In your experience, just because you survive something doesn't mean you're okay, right? Especially when we're dealing with altitude and temperature. What's the concern?
The concern is, well, there are a lot of concerns, but one of the things that can happen is there is a possible shutdown of the organs that occurs while somebody is in flight like this. So it could affect things like his kidneys, his lungs. The whole respiratory system is potentially at risk in this case. For example, with the F-22, one of the big concerns for Air Force pilots is that they're not getting enough oxygen. So they had to redesign the entire oxygen system for the aircraft. What this kid did was he experienced something very similar to that, of course with fewer Gs than you would pull in a fighter jet. But because of that, he had a really lucky break in this particular situation. It could have really adversely affected everything that, as far as his body was concerned, all his physiological functioning, and it could have been a disaster for him.
And of course, there's always issues with what it did to his head and all the psychological issues that made him get in the plane in the first place. But to be clear, the only way he's popping out of that wheel well is if he was in there to start with. There's no way in there from the cargo hold or anything else. So this video seems to substantiate the story. Now we just wait for the next chapter and see how this kid winds up doing.
Absolutely.
Colonel, thank you very much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure,
you
Chris.
being with us.
Thank you.
Kate?